Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Edmund DeVoe. I'm the president of the New Jersey CannaBusiness Association, the state's first and largest trade association established to help New Jersey develop a responsible, sustainable, diverse, and profitable cannabis industry. As we do on most Fridays, welcome to another segment of our Friday Lunch and Learn, where we speak with individuals who have helped shape the industry and continue to help us in a very broad sense. So before we get started and I introduce today's wonderful guest, I do want to recognize our sponsors, without whose help we would be unable to do this. So I'd like to thank Argus 365, a security firm, Burton, Trent, Public Affairs, Curaleaf, are also a board member and license holder. Eaze, one of our newest members, and I just want to recognize Frank Almeida from Financial Resources Federal Credit Union. Thank you so much. Garden State Greenhouse, the law firm of Inglesino, Webster, Wyciskala, and Taylor. Puffin, Entrepreneurs and Investors. Syska Hennessy, a construction outfit. The UFCW, and Hugh Giordano. I want to thank Weeds Direct, and I also want to thank one of our newest members, the Sheet Metal Workers. I want to thank you for joining the association. I want to welcome you all. Without further ado, this segment of Lunch and Learn, again, a very special moment. We were able to open the year with the presumptive and now sitting Senate President, Senator Nick Scutari. And today is very special, continuing with what I would call a policy focus. We are blessed to have with us someone that I've shared the Zoom stage with on several occasions, had a chance to work with as we help shape New Jersey's policy as it relates to municipalities, Mayor Janice Kovach of Clinton, New Jersey. Mayor Kovach, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here with you.
So of noteworthy importance, Mayor Kovach is the past president of the New Jersey League of Municipalities. Extremely interesting time, and I'm going to let the mayor talk about it more. But as the president of not only New Jersey's largest municipal association, but one of the largest municipal associations in the country, Mayor Kovach helped lead the way in terms of development of policy, procedure, helping mayors, local leaders come up with how do we deal with the new industry, cannabis, in the state of New Jersey. So Mayor Kovach, here it is, 2021. You are heading up the largest municipal association in New Jersey, and we're going down this road at light speed pace. Cannabis legalization is occurring, had been approved by the voters just months before February of 2021. The legislature's tackling this. What is the mood of the League of Municipalities? What is going on in the back rooms, the stages, backstage of 565 municipalities, and you're working with them all. So what was that mood like?
You know, it was interesting because we were trying to understand, we were still in the middle of COVID. So we were dealing with the pandemic and had been dealing with the pandemic for, a year prior. And coming out of that, sort of to then go and say, okay, now we've got this new industry that no one's really had any time to understand. I mean, while we had done a lot initially with the league to, put information out there, to do some webinars, COVID overtook our lives, not just at the local level, but at the county, at the state level. So now we're playing catch up to try and be a part of the discussions, number one, as the legislation is being developed, because it is, New Jersey, we're not a one size fits all. My little town of 1.3 square miles is nothing like the township that's right next door to me. Mm. So understanding the needs of my community versus the needs of another community versus the needs of more urban areas. It's how do you do all of those pieces, and how do you represent 565 unique personalities? Because we all have a unique personality. And then add the elected officials into that unique personality, and you have even more fun with it. So it was really trying to put as much information out there without giving a direction, because everyone needed to make the decision that was in their best interest. At the same time, it's an industry that is so new, and not something like where you could just go across the border and say, oh, let me go check it out over here. Even the dispensaries that are in and the grow facilities that are in the state, it's not as if residents could go check it out to see what it looked like. And keep in mind, now you're trying to change 60 years of behavior in 60 days, right? I grew up in the 80s with just say no to drugs. And now all of a sudden you're telling me this is okay. And so while I've done my research as an elected official, and others have as well, you have residents that are still trying to understand it and have the impression of what, those head shops of the 80s were. Oh, this is what it's going to be. This is what my community is going to become. Not understanding that this is a much more sophisticated industry. So it was giving the resources to municipalities to, one, have tours of some of the dispensaries and the grow facilities so that they could see what it is that goes into it. Having conversations and having the CRC, Jeff Brown, all talking to elected officials to understand how in depth and the controls that are in place. I mean, I took the time, my daughter lives in Colorado. I spend a lot of time in California. So I did a lot of research to see how it works in those states, to understand the industry overall. At the same time, the state has not been the best at meeting its statutory deadlines. And that was something that I think most of us were concerned about. It was our deadline to opt in or out was the same as the deadline for the CRC to adopt its rules. Well, I've been doing this for a long time, and I don't know any state agency that actually met its statutory deadline. Although I did lose $20 because Diana met her statutory deadline this time. And I remind her of that frequently. But the point is I think we were all looking at it like, we need to understand what this means to us. This isn't about something. This is a brand new industry, and there are impacts beyond just the community. I mean, you have law enforcement that is still struggling with how to identify someone who's under the influence. This isn't, you can't do a breathalyzer the same way you do with alcohol. So communities are concerned about that. Community members are, and not just to this particular industry, but to any industry, not in my backyard. So, one of the things that I've said to, anyone who's interested in starting or wants to get into the industry, get to know the community you want to go in. We want to know that whoever comes into our community as a business understands who we are as a community and wants to be a part of our community. That's ultimately what this comes down to. So I think ultimately 70% of the towns opted out initially, but that doesn't mean we can't opt back in when we find that right partner. So this really is about relationships and making sure that there is a commitment to understand where you're going, to understand the concerns of residents. Ultimately, elections come around every year because New Jersey's got an election every year. And there are some people who will be concerned how that's going to impact an election. So you have to understand all of that as you're coming in. And the league, I know that there was a lot of comments made that the league was telling people to opt out. League never gave any indication about opting in or opting out. What the league gave is all of the information that we had available to us as it came out, as the CRC would have their meetings, as the legislation was getting signed, as other entities were sharing their concerns. We put it out there and offered up, here's what it is. If you've got the right partner and you want to opt in, that makes sense for you. I mean, the other piece of it too is we weren't sure what we were going to be allowed to do with regards to host agreements and local licensing. I know that there was some issues initially in Massachusetts, I think, with some of the local licensing and host agreements. So, you know, the last thing anyone wants to do is put something in place that's then going to be overturned by a judge. So, you know, really kind of taking a slow step-by-step approach to it. And I think ultimately, you know, towns did what was in their best interest. And we're starting to see some of them now kind of, they've figured out who they want to do business with. And now they're starting to make those changes to their ordinances. And that's going to continue. I mean, this is new. And once that first sale happens and a resident feels comfortable going into a dispensary to kind of understand and look at it, you're going to start to see some of that change take place as well. You'll see residents going to their elected officials saying, no, we want this. This is a benefit. What it can't be for a community is a money grab. That's what, ultimately my concern is.
You know, you're making some wonderful points. And if I could kind of provide a synopsis, number one, we as the cannabis community, as much as it pains us, we have to be patient because everyone is learning this as we go along. I know it's frustrating. There are people that want to get into the industry. They want to start businesses. In fact, one of the things that I'm proud of as we develop the legislation is that it's clear that the intent is for New Jerseyans to benefit.
Yes.
That's the key. New Jerseyans are supposed to be creating industry. New Jerseyans are supposed to be working at these establishments. And so that's the legislative intent. And so let's be patient as we work with you and we work with our municipal leaders who are learning something that only existed months ago.
Right.
The other thing that I'm hearing, and this is probably leading into more of a question, municipalities have such great leeway with respect to what's accepted and what's not. Is that something that was welcomed, knowing that as a municipal leader, as a mayor, as a council person, I now have a lot more say in my future than in previous attempts at doing this. Was that something that was welcomed?
Absolutely. You know, again, it's hard to write legislation that fits every community, you know, because there is such a difference in diversity amongst it. I think to your point about the New Jerseyans, absolutely. And I think that's where a lot of mayors that I've spoken with want to see their local people. And this isn't a knock to the MSOs, but this is about building the economy for New Jersey residents and the New Jersey community as a whole. So I know for me, I love the idea that there are micro licenses out there. I think, especially for small communities, that makes sense. You know, I'm a 1.3 square mile town. You know, having someone local makes much more sense than having a big, you know, I'm never going to get like the Walmart size box store in my community. And I don't want it. That's not who we are. You know, I'm a community of small business, local business owners. That's who we need to embrace in our community when it's right for us. And I think there's a lot of other communities that feel that same way. There are some that are going to be, you know, to embrace the MSOs, and that's fine as well. But that's the beauty of it, is that it's what works for us and not the state telling us, well, this is what you have to do. You know, we think that we've got a lot of control when it comes to our land use. There isn't all that much control. You know, we control our zoning, but even that can be challenged. So to know that we can say yes or no to an industry really goes a long way to giving us that ability to do what's right.
You know, that's an interesting take on what we, again, as the community, what we have to look at. You've got this awesome responsibility, and look, if it's not clear, because I have been in public policy my entire career, my entire professional life. Even as an Army officer, look, our orders came from Washington. So I've been in public policy my whole life. And I think I'll call for it, a call for respect for the mayors and for the council people, because look at what you have to balance. You're balancing civic responsibility and commerce. And that's an awesome task. And I think that's what I'm hearing.
Absolutely.
And your colleagues that are mayors are doing the balance. So while, and you can correct me here, those municipalities that opted out because I think on a large scale, they do want to get to yes. Several do. Several do want to get to yes, but they want to get to yes in the right way.
Right, on their terms.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. No, that is truly where it's at. I know, listen, there are communities that have said absolutely no, we will never allow it. We don't want it. And that's fair. I mean, that is their right as a community to make those determinations. You know, most of us are part-time mayors. Many of us don't get paid. So and a lot have another full-time job. So, trying to balance all of these pieces and make sure that you do what's in the best interest. And of course, you know what it is, the squeaky wheel sometimes. You get the loudest residents who are going to drive some of that policy, but being able to navigate through that and help individuals who are saying no for the wrong reasons to understand, the benefit to a community, and making sure that the community as a whole does the right thing by the business that they're bringing in, and that it's not about a money grab. It is about creating a business community that is welcoming, that is beneficial to both the business owner and to the municipality.
Well, I do want to share, to tell a little bit of the tale out of school. The CannaBusiness Association has been very fortunate in that, as something as simple as you sharing again that virtual stage with me on so many occasions, and that we have been asked by several communities across the state to come and to speak to members of council, to do public presentations, and that's something that we've done. And I can see that we have made a difference in several communities. So it really is about education and communication. I saw Dan Yoloa of Hetty NJ in the chat. So Dan, welcome. And Dan and I was invited to their event this past Sunday, a wonderful event. And he allowed our conversation to go to that point, that it is about education and communication. I know Rob Mejia of Stockton, he's on today. I saw Rob in the chat. And so as we go down this road, is there a preferred method of how how the community can get behind some of the lead organizations like the CannaBusiness Association? So while we're out there, is there something more that we can do to help you along and help your colleagues as we build this industry from the seed up?
It really helps being out there and talking. And Rob, I know you asked the question about yes, a majority of residents voted yes. And this is the piece that's hard to understand. While they voted yes to legalize, because I think everyone ultimately agrees, it doesn't necessarily mean they want it in their backyard. And yes, there is, and some of them look at it like, well, yes, I will purchase. I don't mind driving for purchasing, or I don't mind the delivery. And, is it a lost opportunity for a community? Possibly. But that's ultimately I would hope, and I think from the conversations I've had, the communities that are truly kind of staying away from it have a reason for it. Taking the time, the residents may have said yes, but not yes to in their backyard yet.
Right.
A year or two from now, when it's as normal as a liquor store, then I think you're looking at something different. you look at communities and where they sit on major highways as well, there's a concern. What kind of traffic is it going to drive to my community? Am I going to have other issues because I'm allowing this new industry and this new business in my community? It's fear of the unknown. And we've just been through almost 2 years of fear about so many other things that, taking the time and being patient, it may take an individual multiple meetings with a community. One of the things that I've done when the governor first signed the Jay Koenig law, we had a medical facility that was interested in a piece of property, and I knew where my residents were. They support it, but they didn't want it right where their kids are walking every single day to school. Mm-hmm. So I invited them in to have a conversation, to talk about it, and for them to hear what the residents had to say. I mean, that's ultimately going to be the driver. The residents who are going to be most impacted by the location, and understanding what their concerns are. Can you address some of the concerns and make them feel more comfortable? Possibly. But it's getting to there, because ultimately that will drive, where a town is going to be. And, again, unfortunately, elections also play a major role. And if someone is up for re-election this year, they may be less likely to do something controversial. I mean, I would hope that everyone does everything for the right reasons, not for the political or the expedient reasons, but, that still is out there at points in time.
Thank you so much for your candor. I think it's important that, again, our guests and that they can share with their friends and share throughout the cannabis community. It's important to understand that this is what the reality is. And so as much as we love the prospects of CannaBusiness, we do have to respect the fact that there is a public policy imperative that you've got to adhere to, and that's driven by your residents. So thank you for your candor. So we may not be able to turn everyone into a yes today, but the opportunity does exist, and we remain hopeful.
Yes, and I think it happens. I think, like I said, in the next year or two, as things start to move and people, it's not the out of the norm, but it is now the norm, then you're in a much different place. But it takes time. 60 years and 60 days doesn't happen.
Thank you. By the way, quick commercial break. While I touted that the Asbury Distillery has the world's best gin, I'm loving their bourbon. I'm telling you, they have got this excellent bourbon. They just finished this small batch that was a very exclusive and elusive bottle. It's all gone, but the house blend works. So again, thank you, Asbury Park Distilling Company. When we look at, again, municipal leaders having a great deal of freedom in terms of how they approach the industry, one of the things that we found challenging, and you've heard me address it publicly as we've shared the stage, and that's been the issue of local applications / local licensing fees. So I get the point that municipalities, they want to know who they potentially could be doing business with. So there's a local process that's been implemented in several communities. But what we found, and I'll use the term offensive, is that you have communities that could, they are essentially going to be excluding. It could be an exclusionary practice if you have a licensing fee of tens of thousands of dollars that is essentially non-refundable in many cases. And while we have the intent and while we want to promote local leadership in the industry, we want to promote local businesses, there are towns where their local residents can't get into the industry because they can't afford the local application fee. If you just want to address that, and it was a concern.
You know what, and it bothers me that there are, and I can't speak to the specifics because I haven't had conversations with those individual elected officials and what their reasoning is behind it. It's disappointing that they would exclude potential local business owners and micro licenses because of the need to look for a funding opportunity. And I'll be honest, a lot of municipalities are struggling financially. COVID hit us in ways that we hadn't actually been prepared for some of us. So this is an opportunity to help fill, the lost revenue in other locations. It'd be interesting to see how that plays out. I've never been a proponent of a local licensing fee. A host agreement, I think, is fair, especially if that host agreement is meant to give back to the community that the business is going to be in, whether it's through the fire, EMS, the local schools, parks, playgrounds. Those are, I think, are legitimate asks of industry. And yes, we did fight for a higher tax to come to the municipalities. And while the 2% is what we wound up with, and I understand the reasoning behind it, that's the other piece that towns have to weigh is, what is the cost to bring in a new industry? And is it going to exceed that 2% that I potentially get from the taxing? As far as the local licensing, I don't support that. I think that is wrong in a lot of ways, but that is my personal opinion. I'm not speaking on behalf of any organization or anything along those lines. I don't think that was the intent in giving the towns the ability to make some of their own decisions.
Thank you so much again for your candor. So as we prepare to wrap up, I want to thank everyone for attending today's segment of Lunch and Learn. We try to do this most every Friday. We try to bring you the best in the industry. Clearly, we have brought you the best in terms of our municipal leadership. Mayor Janice Kovach of Clinton, New Jersey, thank you so much for taking time out to be with us today. As we prepare to wrap up, I first want to thank my sponsors. I want to thank Argus 365, a security firm. I want to thank Burton Trent Public Affairs, Curaleaf, a license holder and a board member of the New Jersey CannaBusiness Association. I'd like to thank Eaze. Frank Almeida, thank you so much. Financial Resources Federal Credit Union, Garden State Greenhouse, the law firm of Inglesino, Webster, Wyciskala, and Taylor, Puffin Entrepreneurs and Investors, Syska Hennessy Group, construction firm, the UFCW and Hugh Giordano, Weeds Direct, and one of our newest members, they'll be on the board shortly, the Sheet Metal Workers. Want to thank you all very much for attending.